Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Silver Age Media's Ravenclaw Roundtable.
Welcome to the first episode of Silver Age Media's Ravenclaw Roundtable.
Welcome back to the first episode
Wait.
of.
Didn't you just say that
What are you?
the cat has the time turner? Salem! Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of Silver Age Media's Ravenclaw Roundtable. My name's Charlie.
Joker.
And Alec, Splash, whatever you want to call me.
This week we've got nothing but time, because all three things that we're going to talk about are time related. The first thing that we want to bring up is, I know The Cursed Child, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, J.K. Rowling's addendum to the 7 books that we know and love, has gotten a lot of heat as a screenplay.
It's not very good.
Well, apparently, seeing it as a theatrical production improves the quality significantly.
I'd imagine so, because when you're reading it in your head, you're kind of like putting the characters in yourself, and it's not. It's always what you see on the page is not going to be the same as someone else's adaptation on the screen. So I imagine seeing it in an actual play format would be 100% better than just sitting there and reading it and plugging the characters in yourself, especially some of the characters that we don't actually know.
And some of this comes from, if you think about watching a live performance of a play or a movie or something like that, like where something is being controlled instead of you creating it, you don't really get to key in on the spotlight when it's somebody else's performance. When it's a play, they can show you exactly what was supposed to be the focus of the story during a scene, or is it something in the backdrop that becomes key that you need to focus on more so than whatever the characters are doing. And I think when you translate that to book format where everything's kind of laid out for you, yeah, the words can key you in and be like, and also while they're doing this, something's happening in the background. But when you're seeing that live and your brain can just make that seamless transition, it can change things a whole lot. And I think some of the plot of the book probably does work better when you're seeing it in front of you with no forced, oh, okay, so this is clearly what's happening next. You get to just watch it come to life and you kind of turn off suspension of disbelief kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in your living room being halfway through a page and being like, well, I didn't like that.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like watching Shakespeare. Typically fun. Reading Shakespeare in
Fucking
high school
nightmare.
English
It's the
class,
driest
terrible,
thing.
right? So best of luck to the Melbourne cast. They started shows just this past month at the end of February and will run until February of 2020.
You mentioned that to me the other day, and I understand the reason. It's a play. You can't just like rent the movie after it comes out in theaters. Could you imagine the stress and probably like the amount of boredom you'd get from doing the same show like every weekend or so for an entire year?
Yeah.
Like, I imagine it would eventually just get so damn stale.
But on the performance side of things, like each one is a little different. You always have something
Yeah.
new that like trips you up that you're trying to work on. It's like you've got that aspect of it. But yeah, after a year, I'd be out of it. I would be
say,
so
like,
tuned out.
Like just think, like imagine like if Star Wars were in play form, it'd be like like the second to last weekend of that entire year of filming. It's like, oh, I'm your father. Oh, it's such a surprise.
Ooh, guess who your dad is? Ooh, it's me. Ooh,
saber.
Ooh, lightsaber.
Moving on from that, we're going to talk about some back in time stuff today.
Back in time.
Alec, you're a big comics guy.
Indeed.
You're a huge fan of this. Oh,
Got
he's
the
even
Jim
got a
Lee,
couple. He's
got the bent up Batman hat. We're here.
He's so prepared for it. Alec, give me a rundown on what retconning is, and tell me what you know about the origins of it.
All right, so retconning or retroactive continuity, I think developed in the 80s with Roy Thomas. I think that's the right timeline that I'm on. Fairly certain that's what it was. Essentially, it's the idea of things happening in your continuity as a creator that you go back and fix by, like you said, an addendum, creating things after the fact. So right now, I could slap Charlie as hard as possible. But 10 episodes later, if I say I didn't slap Charlie and we don't have this footage, then I didn't slap Charlie. So the idea is that you can fix holes and errors, and this originates, like I said, in comic books because you have to keep things interesting on the comic side of things, and by telling the same story over and over again, you're never going to get that effect. Think about how Spider-Man was approached in the MCU this time around. We skipped straight over the Uncle Ben murder.
Yeah,
we just went straight into Spider-Man being Spider-Man for the most part. It's still that same idea of like, you know these things happened, or you know a version of these things happened.
Right.
But there's also room to make the character interesting again. So in this case, with J.K. Rowling, there are some characters that we've been introduced to, and I think the main one that everyone's kind of been buzzing about is Nagini. We knew Nagini as the Snake. Following Voldemort's at the heels, becomes a Horcrux, all of that, you know, classic Harry Potter stuff. You love it. But now, going back in time, we're finding out some kind of disturbing things.
Yeah. So the origin of Nagini is that she's actually a maledictus, which is a woman who bears a blood curse passed down from mother to child, who can change back and forth, sort of like an animagus or a werewolf.
Nice.
But eventually, every maledictus is stuck in the form of a snake. And J.K. Rowling got a little bit of heat over this because Nagini is related to an Indian word in Sanskrit. But according to her, the origin comes from the Naga monsters from Polynesian cultures.
Okay.
Which include a large number of ethnic groups.
Okay.
And that was part of her defense as to why the actress for Nagini is, I believe, South Korean,
I think so.
as opposed to picking someone who is Indian.
Okay. Kind of hopping off the rails with that one. It is not uncommon for a character to be cast completely out of place. So, whether that was the intention or not, is it that big of a deal?
In the idea that the word is supposed to belong to a culture and then you're adapting it, I can see it being a big deal there. But if it was written, unknowingly or knowingly, by JK to be something that is multicultural, like I said, in the Polynesian origin of things, where it does span a broad area of culture and race and that thing, I could kind of... I see where people are coming from, why they're upset about it. But if it was kind of not willful ignorance, if it was something that was just unknown, then I don't want to take her to, the pitchforks, because there's a lot of that going around on the internet, particularly towards J.K. Rowling, and it's just not... I just don't think it's deserved in a lot of places. Sure, we've added things, we've changed things, but in order for Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts and the whole brand to grow, things have to change. Sure, these are characters that have become kind of spiritual for some people, like mentioning their name as some kind of ritual in some areas. Like, I get it, you love these characters, you grew up with them, you've been supporting them in books and movies and plays, but that doesn't mean they have to be static to how you understand them.
Let's talk about this. One of the biggest drawbacks from the Harry Potter books and the films is they always talk about Harry's green eyes. Mm-hmm. Daniel Radcliffe's eyes are blue.
And they tried to give him green contacts, which I think he was allergic to. So
great job, guys.
Yeah.
And look at his hair. His especially in year one. The first time we hear about his hair, it's like...
Yeah, it's a complete mess, and she tries to cut it, but it grows back too fast. And then, of course...
His hair's just
It's harder to do that, as at the time, I guess. But, I guess the concept of it was just we can just skip that part.
See, there are things that have been changed from book to film, and we understand it. You see it. There's not things that we may not like Goblet of Fire situation, Dumbledore going a little...
Calmly.
As you put your name in the Goblet of Fire!
There may be things that you dislike about it, but it's gonna have to happen. It's gonna come across sometimes as well thought out and wow, that was a great change. Glad we did that. And then there are some times where it's gonna stand out like a sore thumb, and you're like, that's probably not.
I'm gonna add Nagini. The fans will love it. Wait a minute.
Hold on. One second.
Oh.
Reviewing my notes, I was drunk.
Now, I did spend some time on Twitter looking over some of the other things that J.K. Rowling has added. Mm-hmm. And as an avid sci-fi fantasy reader, one that I found interesting was she responded to a tweet about skinwalkers or shape changers, which are a staple of Native American legend. And she actually says that in her world, in the Harry Potter world, there are no skinwalkers. but that they were. There are no skinwalkers. That was simply a lie created up by the No-Majs, the American Muggles, to demonize wizards. Which, if you think about it, sounds kind of like an animagus.
In some ways, yes. I think like Animagus is probably right on there. But think of the ability that Grindelwald had, where he could literally create another person from his own image. Like Percival Graves is not a real character in the Harry Potter universe. Grindelwald really drew that up and made a person out of nothing. So there is proof of these abilities of some kind of shapeshift, changing something, polyjuice potion. Like there's always these concepts have been here, and so yeah, it could be any version of that, and it sticks because the wizards are actively doing that. So when you see something, you're like, "Huh, that's a comically large wolf." Yep, that's probably a demon.
Suspicious.
Suspicious.
Now, one of the more controversial continuity errors that fans have run into, because in the original 7 books, 8 movies, there aren't that many. I think there was some confusion initially about what goes where, but we've got that all sorted out for the most part. But a big one that happened in Fantastic Beasts 2 is our favorite Hogwarts professor had a cameo. You know her, you love her. She's played by none other than Dame Maggie Smith. It's Minerva McGonagall. Well, in the original movies, she was played by Maggie Smith. And she shows up in a scene that is supposed to be set in 1927.
Interesting.
But based on Harry Potter canon and a little bit of math, we know that Professor McGonagall wasn't born until October the 4th of 1935. And I don't have a math degree for nothing. And so during this math degree, I learned that 1935 is greater than 1927.
That's factual information.
So that's a bit of a mess, right? And beyond that, in Order of the Phoenix, in the book when she's speaking to Umbridge, she mentions that it is her 39th year teaching. Now that's during Harry's 5th year, which we know to be 1995. So we can then discover that her first year ought to have been somewhere around 1956, maybe 1955. Counting years is a little weird sometimes. So there's no way that could have been her.
I think in this case that was more of an accidental error, probably. When filming the scene, they're like, and he's like, yeah, McGonagall will be there. Everyone would love it. One of those things, and then they kind of realized, wait, that can't be right.
Even then, I think at that stage, someone would have caught it in editing if this wasn't purposeful. I think the dailies and stuff are reviewed so often. Going into a final edit, you would have watched it 1,000 times. This feels like a ploy to me of some kind. Leaving Minerva or someone being Minerva McGonagall, maybe it's a different name. Maybe that's why she has the name Minerva, is like someone was hiding in the McGonagall line or something. I don't know what that's going to look like, but to me this feels like it's a setup, a bait for the punch situation. And since there's going to be 5 films, I think they'll include that and key us in on what's actually happening there somewhere in the next 3. I don't know what to expect from it.
Right. I'm assuming it was either really a silly mistake, which is really hard to believe, or that there was I just completely lost everything I was just going to say.
They say it don't be like that, but sometimes it do.
Sometimes it.
What the fuck was I going to say? Oh,
Like it's.
I got it. Right, and with that, I'm pretty sure. So it was either one of two things. It was either just a silly mistake, or they really didn't think about it. But you know that the fans would figure it out at some point, especially like that fast to be like, wait a minute, I know that she wasn't alive back then, or she wasn't teaching during that time. So when you can't just say, we'll throw it in there, no one will notice, when you damn well know fans of that caliber will notice literally every strand of hair that was on the right side of her head. So
And also the way they set it up in the scene, it was supposed to be a big reveal kind of thing. Like, when she stops and says Minerva, like that was supposed to be a like take a breath moment, like what's going on here? And so I just don't see a way that this was set up and nobody caught it. It was like, oh, Minerva being there, that's so cool. Also, what the fuck?
So we all went to go see the movie together on opening night.
It was a fun time.
When that scene came on, my first reaction was, hey, that's Professor McGonagall. Favorite teacher, 10 out of 10. This movie's great. Automatically. Just great.
Improved the caliber
sense.
of the movie significantly, because you're like, oh yeah, all right, Minerva's in the
Surprise
picture.
cameo, hell yeah.
And then I started crunching those numbers. I didn't have the exact numbers that I got for this video. But I started thinking, really? Was she there that early? And my first thought was, oh, I bet it's a different Minerva McGonagall. So maybe the Minerva McGonagall we know is like Minerva McGonagall the second. Or
So
maybe that's her
like an
grandmother.
older like relative or something.
Yeah. But in the published screenplay, that character is listed as Minerva McGonagall. So I guess it still could be just an older relative with the same name. Maybe if it skipped a generation, then she wouldn't have a suffix or an aunt or something. But one interesting theory that I found while I was poking around in the internet was that it might be a time travel thing. Because who, in Prisoner of Azkaban, introduces Hermione to the Time Turner?
It's McGonagall.
Professor McGonagall. And who else knew about it?
Dumbledore.
Professor Dumbledore. Conveniently, the two professors that we know who are in this scene. And you know that if Professor McGonagall just showed up in the past and was talking to Professor Dumbledore, he would roll with it. Right? We know that Dumbledore is that level of planner. He's not gonna beat Grindelwald in these 5 movies without that planning.
I feel like you'd have to have a damn good plot for you to think about McGonagall going back 10 plus years because she can't go back. She's just stuck there, and then she has just to play out the timeline from when she goes back. She can't go forward in time. So there'd obviously have to be some massive plot point that requires her to stop whatever the hell she's doing in Hogwarts, go back in time, sit down with Albus and be like, listen carefully. I'm from the future.
If anyone was going to be receptive to it, it would be Dumbledore. But I will admit that that's a pretty far-fetched theory.
It's out there, but at the same time, there's not a single part of me that disbelieves that the McGonagall that we see in the later films, the Harry Potter actual branded films and not the Fantastic Beasts stuff, wouldn't be down to be like, okay, so you need me to stop, go back that many years, and help you capture, at the time, the most deadly wizard to have ever existed. The point that I want to go in on, one second, is that, like I said, she would be ready for this. And also her experience with the Time Turner, and Dumbledore knowing, having that sinking suspicion that that's exactly what's going on, maybe that's where this is coming from, is that they're in tune with this time-turning thing. Because one, McGonagall would have had to clear it with her to give it to Hermione, or with him to give it to Hermione in the first place. And so maybe that there was already some kind of established connection between the two of them and the Time Turner. Maybe that's how it plays out. Like you said, far-fetched. But if anyone's going to do it, if it's going to be anyone involved in the series that we grew up with, Minerva wouldn't be a bad choice. We don't even see her at full power, and she still kicks ass.
Yeah, all she has to do is square up with Snape, and literally every student in that room went running.
So then let me ask you, if we get all 5 films and that is not expanded upon at all, what would your thoughts be?
I'd just be very confused.
Just be like, I guess literally someone was that dumb that they just missed a continuity error?
It's not someone. It's literally the entirety of the company. Everyone who viewed the film before the day of its theatrical release. I just don't see that I can't believe that would be the way it goes out.
But you also have to think J.K. Rowling has had a hand in this the entire time. And we can see on Twitter she's prone to forgetting stuff. She's written this whole world for us. Lord knows the woman deserves a break. But something like that, if I was Warner Brothers making all these movies, especially these ones that go back into the past of this franchise, I'm going to have somebody whose job it is just like to even go on Pottermore and say, can we have this person? When did this happen? And just get all these details like in a row before you even start shooting.
And
See, you would think you would have people designated to do that, but in that upper area of the film industry, they don't care.
That's fair.
I'm sure the people like the managing, day to day, that there's so much going on that they're not checking for those small errors. But you're talking like a huge crew, and statistically, it's more likely that at least 2 of them knew exactly what was going on.
I mean, I guarantee
the books.
It was probably, someone probably was just like, Miss Rowling, are you sure? Because the timeline, I got it. Just wait.
That's like it could be a thing where if she wants to change it this way, if she wants to develop that out, okay, whatever, like that's fine. If this is the new canon, then it's the new canon. We'll deal with it. But like I said, I just don't see where this isn't like bait for a punch of some kind. Like I said, a family member or someone using the Minerva McGonagall name to hide or something. That seems more likely to what we're going to get than she somehow went back and.
I mean, I'm not out of range to think that I could reasonably see it being like her aunt. They just have the same name. Like I got the same name as my uncle, so I mean, I don't have to have the second after my name. Mm-hmm. So I mean, if it's just like an older relative that's not like directly related to her or is directly related to her, that's fine. I don't need some extremely elaborate plot.
Yeah.
Unless it makes sense and it really helps the story, in which case, yeah, go for it.
And that's like when I said there's a punch, it's just got to be a payoff of some kind. It's got to be a family member or someone connected. Or if you want to go full on crazy, then it's got to be
Minerva McGonagall from Earth 2. She killed the original, is now here to take her place.
Oh, good to know we have Terminator McGonagall.
Terminator McGonagall. I'm here for it.
Minerva McGonagall.
Just give her a rotating arm and just like tape wands onto her arm and just
shoots.
Expelliarmus. Be great.
Just Expelliarmus somebody through a wall.
Fantastic. And the wall beyond that.
But what else you got for us, Charlie?
All right. So the last thing we're going to talk about today is moving forward in time a little bit.
Oh, I see what you did there.
We all love Fantastic Beasts 1. It was a great new entry to the series.
I love it.
Fantastic Beasts 2 wasn't received as strongly.
It was a lot, but I still loved it.
I wouldn't say loved. Like, love is a strong word in the situation. I dipped my foot into that pool and was like, this is okay. Like, I can survive.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
I really enjoyed it. There definitely was a lot going on. Maybe more than I would have expected from the second entry in a 5-film series. But now we have some information about Fantastic Beasts 3, originally slated to begin production this summer, 2019. That has actually been pushed back to fall 2019.
Damn it. I want to see this movie, man.
Well, you're going to be even a little more sad because fans, us included, were expecting it to get the November 2020 release date.
Yeah, to keep the consistency every 2 years.
Every 2 years. But that spot has actually been filled by Warner Brothers' Dune reboot.
Which I'm actually probably more excited for that than I am 90% of the films coming in the next 5 years. So
that's fair.
I can accept
see how the new Shields look, because the 80s ones look so bad.
They were horrible.
Anyway, maybe we'll see it in November. Obviously, Warner Brothers can make multiple movies at once, and they're not exactly pandering to the same.
You could go early November, late November. I could see them doing that because if you let a film have a 3-week burn, it probably had a pretty good fate, especially something that's as star-studded as Dune. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to go early with that one and then follow it up with Fantastic Beasts, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I think that could work out.
Yeah, I think Warner Brothers would know better than to pit 2 movies of that caliber against each other at the box. I mean, either way, they're still making money, but one of them would outweigh the other.
Yeah, like I said, I would think a 3-week run could still be viable because by the end of 3 weeks, you have a really good film if you're still making considerable amounts of money at that point.
If I were Warner Brothers, I would release whatever film I think is going to make less money first, so that way it can try to get as much traffic as it can, and then so if we had Fantastic Beasts 3 come out, say like the first week of November, let it run for 3 weeks, and then right there, the last week of November, throw in Dune, bada bing. Of course, that would also have to go against whatever is coming out in December of 2020, which I can't think of anything right now. But I'm sure at some point it'll have some holiday release to go up against. But if Dune is as fantastic as you guys claim it to be, I don't think it'll have any problems. But this is a Harry Potter show.
And we do have some good news. Production may have been pushed back, but the head of film and TV studio at Warner Brothers, Kevin Tsujihara, told the LA Times in an interview that they weren't just wasting this extra pre-production time that they had been given. They were using it wisely, and that they think that they know what they need to do. That is the Warner Brothers production team, in order to get this third film in the series, hopefully, in his words, even better than the first.
Okay.
Personally, I think that's a bit of a long shot, but they've established enough characters now, and I think that's one of the things that made the second film so busy, was the number of new characters we were meeting.
Well, when you think about it, it's the second film out of a 5-film franchise. So you got 3 films to explain what went on in the second film if you really have to make it all make sense, so everyone will stop being like, oh, this movie's terrible. But I'm like, at face value, I do love the movie. Sure, there are probably some errors that next time I watch it through, I'll see. But I'm not going to base my final judgment on that film until I see the rest of them to figure out why this film is the way it is in the line of movies that come out.
Yeah, I think there's definitely room for that film to improve by adding on, and not necessarily retconning in this case, but just explaining. You don't have to change what happened. Just let us know, why was the bloodline thing important? What was this assassination storyline going on?
Yeah.
What was this race against time that we're dealing with? Because it wasn't really introduced until the end of the film when they were like, hey, there was totally a reason behind all of this, and it's all connected.
Yeah.
Like, that didn't really leave me with anything to the storyline. So if you could tell me why these characters are actually, uber important to the storyline, and what consequence they have, particularly in a movie called The Crimes of Grindelwald, then I'll start to get back on board. But those glaring issues with the film are what held me back from loving it. Because I did think a lot of the scenes in that movie worked. A lot of the set pieces were fantastic. It was just those concurrent storylines all running together that I was like, 3/4 of this is a great movie. The other quarter, my head is just spinning. I don't know what I'm watching.
That's fair. Tsujihara also noted that they expect the third movie to be bigger than both the first 2 combined, from my understanding, reading his comments. So that's exciting to me. I hope we get to see more and more of these fantastic beasts.
Yeah, that would be an exciting point to tag on. It's like, hey, we promised a lot with the first movie. We did a lot with the Beast and really showcased them. In the second one, we got a little bit of it, but we didn't get nearly as much of the wild wonder portion of the film, and I think that could really kick some life into the series again.
I don't know. I'm kind of on the side thinking like Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is the name of the book that Newt writes. We got some beasts in that movie. It was a fun movie. It was a really good movie. But there's more to tell than just that moving into the Crimes of Grindelwald. They're wanting to push toward a bigger picture being like the great fight between Dumbledore and Grindelwald. I don't think it needs to focus on Fantastic Beasts. While it is in the title, I'm pretty sure that's just the title they went with. And they're like, okay, cool. There's the main header. Keep that. Put the subtext underneath it.
I would agree with that, but because Newt is the central character and animals are such an important portion of that character.
Oh, I have no doubt that we'll keep seeing Fantastic Beasts in some way or another. It's just, I don't know how important that role is going to be as the movies continue.
I think they're going to continue to rise in importance because they tried to go a little more grand scale, Grindelwald's recruiting thing in this movie, and the idea, the concept hit, but the execution wasn't great. Right. And I think you can numb some of that by giving them a broader, more fun to watch adventure, and by taking the scope of it bigger, that's kind of how I anticipated as well. Because now we do have Grindelwald probably going international to recruit and form this beginning of an army, great wizard war kind of situation. But also you have Newt working these other storylines while Dumbledore is finally being able to move against Grindelwald, and so I think we're building up to a point where the animals are going to play an important portion of Newt's story, but not so much of the Fantastic Beasts film story. They will assist him, but in the major Harry Potter canon that we're watching, you're right, it probably won't affect the overall arch of the story too much. But if it does push Newt and Jacob and that story on and further, then Yeah, let's get some more of the wacky animal stuff that was going on in the first
Yeah.
one, because it did make that world feel like twice as big when he could hop into the briefcase and all of a sudden there was just a whole other land in there.
Overall, I just need to know what happened with Queenie. She lost her damn mind.
Regardless of what happens, regardless of these errors or what choices they make, I'm super excited for the third movie.
Oh, for sure.
We don't have a release date for it yet, but I know I am on the edge of my seat in anticipation.
I'm really mad at you for that one.
We did a time turner bit in the beginning, and you're mad at that?
Yeah.
I'm super excited for the movie. These guys are super excited for the movie. And everything Harry Potter, really.
Facts.
Yeah.
Facts.
Big facts.
If you like what you heard, tell us down in the comments. If you disagree with some of the theories that we put out there or have your own, let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
Let him know it's his show.
Yeah, don't talk to me.
Let me know. I'd love to read your comments. Unless they're hateful, because I already hate myself.
It's okay.
But with that, we'll go and get out of here. And remember, mischief managed.